I always knew my MIL had a way of getting what she wanted. She wasn't the type to ask, she expected, and if she didn't get her way, she made sure everyone suffered until she did. But even knowing that, I never imagined she would try to claim the right to name my baby as if he were her property. When I announced my pregnancy, I expected excitement. Instead, she acted like this baby was hers, and she had already made a decision for us, whether we liked it or not. If it's a girl, you have to name her after me. It's a family tradition. I thought she was joking. I laughed, waiting for her to say she was kidding, but she wasn't. She just stared at me, completely serious, like this wasn't even up for discussion. I already told everyone in the family. Everyone agrees it's the right choice. My stomach dropped. She hadn't just suggested a name. She had decided. For me, without even asking. I turned to my husband, expecting him to say something, to step in and remind her that this was our baby, but he just stood there, shifting uncomfortably, not saying a word. That was my first red flag. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. We actually have other names in mind, I said carefully, trying to keep things civil. Her expression dropped instantly. The fake sweetness vanished, and in its place I saw something colder, something uglier. I'm the grandmother. I deserve this. After everything I've done for you two, you owe me. Excuse me? Owe you? For what? Carrying my own child? Going through 9 months of pregnancy, the pain, the labor? Since when did naming my baby become a debt I had to pay? That's when I knew I had two choices. Either give in and let her win, or find a way to beat her at her own game. Guess which one I picked. And let me tell you, Zay, she never saw it coming. I sat there, gripping the armrest, my nails digging into the fabric as I forced myself to stay calm. My MIL sat across from me, relaxed, smiling like she had already won. My husband sat beside me, staring at the floor. He hadn't said a word since she declared that our baby had to be named after her. She had told the whole family before even asking us. She had decided for me. And now I was supposed to be grateful? We appreciate your input, but we have other names we're considering, I said, keeping my voice steady. Her expression barely changed, but I saw the flicker of irritation in her eyes. Other names? She repeated, her tone sharp, like the very idea was ridiculous. Then she scoffed. Why would you waste time looking for another name when we already have one that honors this family? I clenched my jaw. Because this is our child, and we want to choose a name that feels meaningful to us. She sighed loudly, shaking her head as if I was some naive child who needed guidance. Oh, sweetheart, you just don't understand yet. One day when you have grandchildren, you'll see why this matters. It's about legacy. Legacy, right. This wasn't about family. It wasn't about tradition. It was about her. I do understand, I said evenly. And that's why we want to choose a name that's special to us, not just because someone else expects it. Her smile thinned. And what name would be so special that you'd break a family tradition over it? I hesitated. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I already knew it wouldn't matter. We haven't decided yet, I admitted. Her eyebrows shot up. Oh? So you don't even have a name picked out? That's what I thought. Why would you risk upsetting the entire family over something you haven't even figured out? My stomach twisted. The way she said it. Like it was a foregone conclusion that not naming my daughter after her would cause an uproar. Like she had already set the narrative, and if I didn't follow it, I'd be the villain. No one is going to be upset, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. Emil let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. Oh, honey, you think people won't talk? That they won't see this as a rejection of this family? Rejection. As if choosing a name for my own child was some kind of betrayal. That's not fair. You're making it sound like if we don't use your name, we're disrespecting you. Her lips curled into a thin smile. If the shoe fits... I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palm. She wasn't just pushing for this name. She was planning the idea that any other choice would be an insult. She wanted to turn this into something bigger than it was. To make sure that if I didn't give in, I'd have the whole family breathing down my neck. I turned to my husband, hoping, praying, that he would see what was happening. That he would finally step in and shut this down. But he just sat there, looking uncomfortable, like he wanted to be anywhere but in this room. Look, I get both sides, he said finally, rubbing his temples. Maybe we should just, think about it? Think about it? My head snapped toward him. Are you serious? He sighed. I just don't want to start a fight over something like this. I almost laughed. It already is a fight. MIL leaned in slightly, her eyes glinting as she watched us. See? Even he understands why this is important. I turned back to my husband, my voice shaking with frustration. This is our child. Why does it feel like we're asking for permission instead of making a decision? He exhaled heavily. Because it's just a name. And if using it makes things easier for everyone, why wouldn't we at least consider it? My heart dropped. Easier for everyone? I repeated, stunned. He wasn't thinking about me. He wasn't thinking about us. He was thinking about keeping the peace with his mother at my expense. MIL smiled, sensing my hesitation. I knew you would come around. You're a smart woman. You understand how family works. I sat there, my hands cradling my stomach, feeling the weight of what was happening. I had spent so much time dreaming about what life would be like as a mother. I had imagined picking out names with my husband, whispering my baby's name as I rocked them to sleep. I never thought I would have to fight for the right to name my own child. And I wasn't just fighting betrayals. I was fighting my own husband's spinelessness. MIL let out a satisfied sigh and stood up, smoothing out her blouse as if this had been some casual, pleasant conversation. You have time to think about it. I know you'll make the right choice. I mean, it's not like you'd want to start your motherhood journey by upsetting your family, right? I didn't respond, because at that moment something inside me shifted. I had spent this entire conversation trying to be rational, trying to keep the peace, trying not to offend. But MIL didn't care about my feelings. She didn't care about compromise. She wanted control. And my husband? He had just proved that I was on my own. I took a slow breath, forced a smile, and nodded. You're right. We'll think about it. MIL beamed, completely unaware that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she had won. She thought I was finally giving in. But I had come around, just not in the way she expected. She wanted this baby named after her? Fine. I'd give her exactly what she asked for, just not in the way she expected. And when the day came to reveal our baby's name, she wouldn't just be surprised. She would regret ever trying to manipulate me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I sat there nodding occasionally as MIL kept talking, pretending like the decision had already been made. My husband barely spoke, and when he did, it was only to make some weak attempt to keep the conversation calm. As if I was the problem. As if I was the one making a scene just by wanting control over my own child's name. By the time we got in the car to go home, my entire body was tense. I had held back everything I wanted to say, biting my tongue so hard I was surprised it hadn't bled. But the moment we pulled out of the driveway, I couldn't hold it in any longer. You just sat there, I said, my voice tight. My husband sighed, gripping the steering wheel a little too hard. I didn't want to start an argument. So you just let her walk all over us? Over me? I was trying to keep the peace. I let out a bitter laugh. Peace for who? Certainly not for me, 'cause right now I feel like I'm at war. He exhaled sharply. Look, I get why you're upset, but does it really matter that much? It's just a name. It's not just a name, I snapped. It's our child. It's our decision, and you let her act like it was hers. I didn't let her do anything. You didn't stop her either. Silence filled the car. I turned to look out the window, my hands pressed against my stomach as if I needed to protect my baby from all of this, from him, from her, from the weight of a family that saw me as nothing more than a vessel for their traditions. Do you even care? I asked finally, my voice quiet now. Of course I care, he said quickly, but it didn't sound convincing. Then act like it, I whispered. The rest of the drive was silent. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the anger simmer under my skin. I'd spent my entire pregnancy trying to be accommodating, trying to be respectful, trying to keep the peace. But peace was a one-way street in this family, and it always led back to Mill getting exactly what she wanted. And then a thought crossed my mind, one that made me smile for the first time that day. If Mill wanted a legacy so badly, maybe I should give her one. Just not in the way she expected. The next morning I woke up early and grabbed my laptop. If MIL thought she could force this on me, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I started researching names, not just names we liked, but names that would make Miles' head explode. I wasn't just looking for something that felt meaningful to us. I was looking for something that would make a statement. But first, I needed a plan. Mill wasn't just going to wait until the birth certificate was signed. She would start treating this as a done deal, throwing around her chosen name at every family gathering, calling my unborn baby her little namesake, like it was some inevitable truth. I needed to play along just enough to keep her from seeing what was coming. So I did. The next time we saw her, I kept my voice soft, my expression hesitant. We've been thinking about what you said, I told her, glancing at my husband as if I was still unsure. And maybe you're right. Maybe it is important to honor family. Her smile was instant, triumphant. She squeezed my hands like I had just given her the greatest gift in the world. Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. It's the right thing to do. My husband looked relieved, like I had finally stopped making things difficult, like I had just made his life easier. From that moment on, I let MIL believe she had won. I let her talk about her grandchild with her name, let her order custom baby blankets embroidered with the name, let her go on Facebook announcing to all her friends that the family tradition was being upheld. She planned her baby shower, not mine, and turned it into a full-blown event about her legacy. She even went so far as to have a massive banner printed with the baby's name on it, which she proudly displayed at the entrance. And the whole time, I played the part. I let her gloat. I let my husband relax, thinking the problem was solved. I let everyone believe that I had finally come around. And then the baby was born. The look on her face when she walked into the hospital room, all smiles, ready to meet her little namesake, only for my husband to hand her the birth certificate with a completely different name on it? Priceless. What is this? She stammered, staring at the name like it was a mistake. It's our baby's name, I said sweetly, cradling my daughter in my arms. Her face turned red. But we agreed? No. I cut her off. You decided. We never agreed to anything. She turned to my husband, eyes wide with betrayal. Tell me this is a joke. He looked uncomfortable, but for once, he didn't have an excuse to hide behind. It's done. The birth certificate is already filed. Mael's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I could see the exact moment she realized that she had been played, and then I twisted the knife. But don't worry, I added with a smile. We did honor family. We named her after my grandmother, a woman who actually deserves to be remembered. Her eyes burned with pure rage. Mills stormed out of the hospital that day, humiliated, furious, and powerless for the first time in her life. And I held my baby in my arms, feeling lighter than I had in months, because I had won, on my terms, and she would never make the mistake of underestimating me again. The hospital room felt eerily quiet after MIL stormed out. For the first time in months, I wasn't drowning in her overbearing presence, her fake sweetness, her constant manipulation. The air felt lighter, almost as if the room itself was relieved to be rid of her. I looked down at my baby, peacefully sleeping in my arms, completely unaware of the storm she had just been born into. But she wouldn't grow up under Emil's control. I made sure of that. My husband stood near the door, his hands shoved into his pockets, staring at the floor. He hadn't said a word since his mother left. No defense, no apology, nothing. You should go after her, I said, my voice flat. He looked up, startled. What? No, You're clearly worried about how she feels. Go check on her. He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. Come on, don't do this. You knew she was going to be upset. I let out a short laugh. Upset? She's been treating me like an incubator for the last 9 months, demanding I give her exactly what she wants, and you think her being upset is on my fault? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Silence. I sighed, adjusting my grip on my baby. You know, for months I kept hoping you'd stand up for me. Just once. I kept waiting for you to tell her to back off, to remind her that this was our baby, not hers. But you never did. He sat down on the chair next to the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I didn't think it was worth the fight. No, you didn't think I was worth the fight. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. That's not fair. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty damn fair. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but then he shut it again, exhaling heavily. I wasn't in the mood for another pointless discussion. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I had just gone through labor, just given birth, and instead of enjoying these first moments with my daughter, I was here, arguing with a man who had chosen keeping his mother happy over supporting his wife. I looked at him one last time, my voice quieter now. I'm done. He frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I'm done trying to convince you to put me first. I'm done waiting for you to defend me. And I'm done pretending like everything is fine when it's not. His face paled slightly. Oh, I just had our child, and instead of celebrating that with me, you're worried about your mother's feelings. That tells me everything I need to know. I turned my attention back to my baby, gently brushing my fingers over her tiny hand. Right now, my only priority is her. Not you, not your mother, just her. He didn't respond right away. He just sat there, staring at the floor like a man who had finally realized he had lost something he could never get back. Good, because I had finally won my freedom. The first few days after Emil's dramatic exit were strangely peaceful. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive messages from her flying monkeys. It was almost too quiet. I knew better than to believe she had actually given up. Mail didn't lose, at least not in her own mind. If she wasn't calling, it was because she was regrouping, figuring out her next move. Sure enough, on the third day, my husband's phone lit up with her name. "You should answer that," I said, not looking up from our baby. He hesitated, then stepped outside. I wasn't sure what was being said, but the muffled sound of his voice told me he was finally standing his ground, or at least attempting to. 15 minutes later, he came back, his face unreadable. "Well?" I asked, rocking our daughter gently. "She's mad," he admitted. "She says you humiliated her, made her look like a fool in front of the family." I let out a quiet chuckle. "Oh, so she's mad that she embarrassed herself?" He sighed. "She wants an apology." I looked at him, waiting to see if he was actually serious. When he didn't say anything else, I let out a slow breath and shook my head. "You already know my answer." He sat down heavily on the chair beside me, rubbing his hands together. "I told her you weren't going to apologize. That she needs to drop this if she wants to be in our daughter's life." That got my attention. And she said she will think about it." I smiled, turning my attention back to my baby. Mill could think about it all she wanted, but I knew the truth. She had no more control over me, over my child, over anything. She lost. And now, for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I could finally breathe.